Over a year ago now, I did a video duology presenting evidence that the FNAF 6 building is actually the same building as Fredbear's Family Diner, just reused. But looking back, those videos, especially the second one, were pretty scuffed, and I feel like presenting all the evidence in one video and explaining everything better would be wise. This video will be a remake of those videos, which is something that I've done for my videos on Michael being the player of FNAF 4, Sister Location being after FNAF 1, Midnight Motorist, and now I'm doing it on this topic, which seems wise to me to refresh the idea in everyone's minds and really get everyone thinking. It also seemed fitting to release this video today because it's actually the 8-year anniversary of FNAF 4 today. This video wasn't originally supposed to come out today, but I think it's fitting that a FNAF 4 related video is coming out today. This is also part 4 of my ongoing 5-part long extended theory, so you should watch the previous 3 videos if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the final part, which is coming out tomorrow. So that's what we'll be talking about in today's video: why Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place is actually Fredbear's Family Diner. Back in November of 2021, the final Fazbear Frights book, besides Felix the Shark, was released. The first story, Prankster, was decent, but the second story, Kids at Play, was in my opinion not very good. Because I didn't enjoy the second story, I didn't have enough motivation to read the final epilogue or the final story, Find Player 2. I did only read those stories for the first time months after they were actually released. The stories ended up being pretty good, but it took me a while to actually read them. Find Player 2 was a pretty good story, but since I read it pretty late, it was pretty much fresh in my mind when I ended up playing FNAF 6 all the way through for the first time. When I was playing FNAF 6, I noticed something very interesting with the sponsorships. One of the sponsorships is called Flo's Glossy Floss. Immediately this clicked in my head. Flo's Glossy Floss. In the Stitch Wraith Stingers, it's talked about how Freddy Fazbear's Pizza shuts down and is bought out by many different companies for decades. And in Find Player 2, what is revealed is that one of the locations that opened up in the place of the old Freddy's was Flo's Fabulous Eatery. The concept of a Freddy's building being reused as another location is interesting on its own, but I also believe Splitline Games, as I discussed on the video on screen, which you should definitely watch if you haven't yet. Splitline Games, though, is a theory that states all the Stitch Wraith Stinger elements from prior to FNAF 6 take place in the games, meaning that the original Freddy's is reused as Flo's Fabulous Eatery in the game's timeline, probably very shortly after Afton gets spring-locked, with the safe room being sealed and the other Fazbear stuff in storage rooms like we see in the scoop. But what exactly ties this to FNAF 6? Flo's. Freddy's becomes Flo's Fabulous Eatery, and in FNAF 6, we have Flo's Glossy Floss. This to me seems to be telling us that there is a connection between FNAF 6 and the concept of a Freddy's building being reused, implying that FNAF 6 is a prior location. However, you may be thinking that in Find Player 2, it's a Freddy's location rather than a Fredbear's, which would imply that FNAF 6 is the original Freddy's, but that can't be the case for one reason. In the Stitch Wraith Stingers, Jeff's Pizza is still the Freddy Fazbear building's replacement, and the fire site, which is FNAF 6, is completely separate from Jeff's Pizza. What this essentially means is that since the original Freddy's is Jeff's Pizza, and that FNAF 1 location is the same building as the original Freddy's due to it still having a safe room despite them being discontinued before FNAF 2, which is why there isn't a safe room in FNAF 2 and there is one in FNAF 1, that means that Freddy's is not FNAF 6, and other evidence suggests that Fredbear's is FNAF 6 anyway, including Charlotte. The alleyway that we see in FNAF 6's alleyway rare screens looks very similar to the one we see outside where Charlotte died, which implies that Charlotte died in the same location as FNAF 6. This is also supported by the puppet poster on Lefty's screen, because while that may just be to indicate Lefty is the puppet, and that's probably what it is, it may also have a double meaning. That would imply that the location Charlotte died is the FNAF 6 location. But what exactly is it that implies she died at Fredbear's Family Diner? Many people say that Charlotte must have died at Freddy's, because the bear in the minigame looks more like Freddy than Fredbear, but this is literally the only thing that implies this. However, even this isn't even that great of evidence, because the Take Cake minigame was back in FNAF 2, and at that time we hadn't seen anything of Fredbear's yet. Take Cake being in FNAF 2 and happening at an old location in the same game where Fredbear's, the first location, was mentioned for the first time, implied that Charlotte did die there, since she was the first victim. Hell, back in the early days of FNAF, Scott said that Game Theory's video on FNAF 2 was amazing and got almost everything right, and since we now know that he was wrong about Phone Guy being Purple Guy, it's most likely that that was the only thing that he got wrong. It might not have been, but that's most likely the only thing. That would imply that he was correct about Charlotte dying at Fredbear's. I also recently did a video discussing the Fredbear plushie's true identity, that was yesterday's video, and I came to the conclusion that Charlotte is the Fredbear plushie in the final minigame of FNAF 4. That would mean that Charlotte died before the Bite of 83, and that that would mean that she died when Fredbear's was still open, which would allow for the opportunity of her dying at Fredbear's. There's also the Fazbear Fright story The Scoop, which has a dead kid following around the main character of Mandy. Even when Mandy would walk away from the kid, he would always appear exactly where she would go, just like the Fredbear plushie follows the bite victim around no matter where he goes. And where did this kid die? Sideshow's Snack Shack, which is described as a family diner. This shows that a kid who died at Fredbear's is the Fredbear plushie, which implies that Charlotte died at Fredbear's, and since the location she died at seems to be the same building as the FNAF 6 location, that implies that the FNAF 6 location is Fredbear's. Another thing that we can find in the FNAF 6 alley is a poster for the Spook Fest, which not only implies that FNAF 6 takes place around October, but it also connects to the FNAF VR Curse of Dreadbear DLC and its repeated mention of Fall Fest 83, possibly when the bite victim died, or just a random Halloween event that Steelwool created for the DLC. But the fact that it's specifically mentioned to be 1983, along with Dreadbear's numerous connections to the bite victim, make it very interesting that the FNAF 6 game mentions the Spook Fest, which connects to the Fall Fest, which is in 1983, connecting the FNAF 6 location to 1983. Since the DLC surrounds Dreadbear, who, like I said, is associated with the bite victim, who died at Fredbear's, it seems like it's tying FNAF 6 to Fredbear's Family Diner. A few years ago, Dawko was sent promotional images for Security Breach that he showed at various milestones of his charity stream. Some of these teasers were posters that we ended up seeing in-game, and at the time, everyone was very excited because the posters were of Fredbear's Family Diner. This led many people to speculate that the Pizzaplex would be built over the original Fredbear's Family Diner. I mean, why else would we be shown posters of Fredbear's? But then Security Breach came out, and it was revealed that it was actually built over the FNAF 6 location. But then, why were we shown posters of one location when the Pizzaplex was under another? Well, here's the thing. We weren't wrong. The Fredbear posters are meant to lure us into realizing that the location under the Pizzaplex, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, is Fredbear's Family Diner. We also see with the Pizza Place in Security Breach that it has a big red door as an entrance and a car just outside the location and to the right of the door. Back in FNAF 4, we see that Fredbear's has a big red door, and there are cars just outside the location on the right of the entrance. There's also some other things in FNAF 6 itself that implies this. The FNAF 6 game has two different icons. One of them is Golden Freddy, which is very interesting due to the fact that Golden Freddy is a version of Fredbear, connecting FNAF 6 to Fredbear's. But that's not all. The other icon for the FNAF 6 game is Rockstar Freddy. Rockstar Freddy's coloring is still brown, but it's a bit brighter of a brown, and on top of that he has a purple hat and bow tie, just like Fredbear. The main mascot of FNAF 6 looks just like Fredbear. Coincidence? I think not. But that's not even all. Rockstar Freddy as well as the other Rockstar animatronics have 5 fingers each. The reason this is really interesting is that most of the animatronics in the series that have 5 fingers are Springlock suits. While it's unlikely but possible that the Rockstars are Springlock suits, it's very likely that they were given 5 fingers to get us to connect these animatronics to Springlocks, which originated at, you guessed it, Fredbear's Family Diner. Going back to Fazbear Frights though, and specifically the Scoop story, recently I was going through some of my old videos and I found an old theory discussion video, which I used to do semi-often, but I haven't done it in a long time. I was just skimming through the video and landed on a point where I was discussing the Stevie Fredbear plush connection, which I mentioned earlier in this video, but after that, I noted the fact that Stevie not only dies in a supposed family diner, but the bear animatronic which was the face of this family diner has its mouth bolted shut, which seems to me to be a very clear reference to the bite of 83. But not only that, this family diner shut down and then was repurposed into a movie theater. Think about what I just said. A family diner building was repurposed, which seems to me to be a pretty clear indication that Fredbear's Family Diner, after shutting down, was repurposed into another building, which was more than likely FNAF 6. And finally, there's what Henry says at the end of FNAF 6.
This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should.
Based on this line, it really just makes a lot of sense for the supposed ending of FNAF to be at the restaurant that started it all, morphed into a trap to end it all. But as we all know, this wasn't the end of FNAF. Many people don't like that the story continued, and some believe that this ending was successful, but just that Cassidy and or the Mimic is what caused everything to continue. But I honestly don't think that FNAF 6 worked. But unlike most people, I think that's a very good thing. Why? Well, that's just gonna have to wait until the next theory video, the final part of this 5-part long extended theory. So stay tuned for that, but in the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys!